Welcome to the wonderful world of faith, one of 7 worlds in 7 World Productions, a subsidiary of Angelgram Music. Hello, my name is Gino, and I am sole owner of Angelgram Music as well as executive director of 7 World Productions. Continuing our series In Search of Faith, we're dealing once again with Christianity, part 3 of 4 parts, possibly 5, we'll see. Thank you for listening, and listen now to part 3. Continuing now in our In Search of Faith, we're dealing with Christianity, and we're talking about Jesus Christ. We're now to that section where we discuss his proclamation as Christ and Transfiguration. At about the middle of each of the 3 synoptic Gospels are 2 significant events: the confession of Peter and the transfiguration of Jesus. These 2 events are not mentioned in the Gospel of John. In his confession, Peter tells Jesus, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus affirms that Peter's confession is divinely revealed truth. After the confession, Jesus tells his disciples about his upcoming death and resurrection. In the Transfiguration, Jesus takes Peter and 2 other apostles up an unnamed mountain, where he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzlingly white. A bright cloud appears around them, and the voice from the cloud says, "This is my Son, the Beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." Now we'll move on to the Passion Week. The description of the last week of the life of Jesus is often called Passion Week, and it occupies about 1/3 of the narrative in the canonical Gospels, starting with Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem and ending with his crucifixion. In the Synoptics, the last week in Jerusalem is the conclusion of the journey through Perea and Judea that Jesus began in Galilee. Jesus rides a young donkey into Jerusalem, reflecting the tale of the Messiah's donkey, an oracle from the book of Zechariah, in which the Jews' humble king enters Jerusalem this way. People along the way lay cokes and small branches of trees known as palm fronds in front of him and sing part of the Psalms. Jesus next expels the money changers from the Second Temple, accusing them of turning it into a den of thieves through their commercial activities. He then prophesies about the coming destruction, including false prophets, wars, earthquakes, celestial disorders, persecution of the faithful, the appearance of an abomination of desolation, and unendurable tribulations. The mysterious Son of Man, he says, will dispatch angels to gather the faithful from all parts of the earth. Jesus warns that these wonders will occur in the lifetimes of the hearers. In John, the cleansing of the temple occurs at the beginning of Jesus' ministry instead of at the end. Jesus comes into conflict with the Jewish elders, such as when they question his authority and when he criticizes them and calls them hypocrites. Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 apostles, secretly strikes a bargain with the Jewish elders, agreeing to betray Jesus to them for 30 silver coins. The Gospel of John recounts of 2 other feasts in which Jesus taught in Jerusalem before the Passion Week. In Bethany, a village near Jerusalem, Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. This potent sign increases the tension with authorities who conspire to kill him. Mary of Bethany anoints Jesus' feet, foreshadowing his entombment. Jesus then makes his messianic entry into Jerusalem. The cheering crowds greeting Jesus as he enters Jerusalem add to the animosity between him and the establishment. In John, Jesus has already cleansed the second temple during an earlier Passover visit to Jerusalem. John next recounts Jesus' Last Supper with his disciples. The Last Supper is the final meal that Jesus shares with his 12 apostles in Jerusalem before his crucifixion. The Last Supper is mentioned in all 4 canonical Gospels. Paul's first epistle to the Corinthians also refers to it. During the meal, Jesus predicts that one of his apostles will betray him. Despite each apostle's assertion that he would not betray him, Jesus reiterates that the betrayer would be one of those present. In Matthew and in John specifically identify Judas as the traitor. In the Synoptics, Jesus takes bread, breaks it, and gives it to the disciples, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you." He then has them all drink from a cup, saying, "This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood." The Christian sacrament or ordinance of the Eucharist is based on these events. Although the Gospel of John does not include a description of the bread and wine ritual during the Last Supper, most scholars agree that John chapter 6, verse 22 through 59, the Bread of Life discourse, has a Eucharistic character and resonates with the institution narratives in the Synoptic Gospels and in the Pauline writings on the Last Supper. In all 4 Gospels, Jesus predicts that Peter will deny knowledge of him 3 times before the rooster crows the next morning. In Luke and John, the prediction is made during the supper. In Matthew and Mark, the prediction is made after the supper. Jesus also predicts that all his disciples will desert him. The Gospel of John provides the only account of Jesus washing his disciples' feet after the meal. John also includes a long sermon by Jesus preparing his disciples, now without Judas, for his departure. In chapters 14 through 17 of the Gospel of John are known as the Farewell Discourse and are a significant source of Christological content. In the Synoptics, Jesus and his disciples go to the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus prays to be spared his coming ordeal. Then Judas comes with an armed mob sent by the chief priests, scribes, and elders. He kisses Jesus to identify him to the crowd, which then arrests Jesus. In an attempt to stop them, an unnamed disciple of Jesus uses a sword to cut off the ear of a man in the crowd. After Jesus' arrest, his disciples go into hiding, and Peter, when questioned, 3 times denies knowing Jesus. After the 3rd denial, Peter hears the rooster crow and recalls Jesus' prediction about his denial. Peter then weeps bitterly. In John chapter 18, verse 1 through 11, Jesus does not pray to be spared his crucifixion, as the Gospel portrays him as scarcely touched by such human weakness. The people who arrest him are Roman soldiers and temple guards. Instead of being betrayed by a kiss, Jesus proclaims his identity, and when he does, the soldiers and officers fall to the ground. The Gospel identifies Peter as the disciple who used the sword, and Jesus rebukes him for it. After his arrest, Jesus is taken late at night to the private residence of the high priest Caiaphas, who had been installed by Pilate's predecessor, the Roman procariat Valerius Gratus. The Sanhedrin was a Jewish judicial body. The Gospel accounts differ on the details of the trials. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus is taken to the house of the high priest Caiaphas, where he is mocked and beaten that night. Early the next morning, the chief priests and scribes lead Jesus away into their council. In John chapter 18, verse 12 through 14, he states that Jesus is first taken to Annas, Caiaphas' father-in-law, and then to the high priest. During the trials, Jesus speaks very little, mounts no defense, and gives very infrequent and indirect answers to the priest's questions. prompting an officer to slap him. In Matthew chapter 26, verse 62, Jesus' unresponsiveness leads Caiaphas to ask him, "Have you no answer?" In Mark chapter 14, verse 61, the high priest then asked Jesus, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus replies, "I am," and then predicts the coming of the Son of Man. This provokes Caiaphas to tear his own robe in anger and to accuse Jesus of blasphemy. In Matthew and Luke, Jesus' answer is more ambiguous. In Matthew chapter 26, verse 64, he responds, "You have said so." And in Luke chapter 22, verse 70, he says, "You say that I am." The Jewish elders take Jesus to Pilate's court and ask the Roman governor Pontius Pilate to judge and condemn Jesus for various allegations, like subverting the nation, opposing the payment of tribute, claiming to be Christ, claiming to be a king, and claiming to be the Son of God. The use of the word king is central to the discussion between Jesus and Pilate. In John chapter 18, verse 36, Jesus states, "My kingdom is not from this world." But he does not unequivocally deny being the King of the Jews. In Luke 23, verse 7 through 15, Pilate realizes that Jesus is a Galilean, and thus comes under the jurisdiction of Herod Antipas, the tetrarch of Galilee and Perea. Pilate sends Jesus to Herod to be tried, but Jesus says almost nothing in response to Herod's questions. Herod and his soldiers mock Jesus, put an expensive robe on him to make him look like a king, and return him to Pilate, who then calls together the Jewish elders and announces that he has not found this man's guilt. Observing a Passover custom of the time, Pilate allows one prisoner chosen by the crown to be released. He gives the people a choice between Jesus and a murderer called Barabbas, son of the Father, from the common given name Abba. Persuaded by the elders, the mob chooses to release Barabbas and crucify Jesus. Pilate writes a sign in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek that reads, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews," then scourges Jesus and sends him to be crucified. The soldiers place a crown of thorns on Jesus' head and ridicule him as the King of the Jews. They beat and taunt him before taking him to Calvary, also called Golgotha, for crucifixion. Jesus' crucifixion is described in all four canonical Gospels. After the trials, Jesus is led to Calvary carrying his cross. The route traditionally thought to have been taken is known as the Via Dolorosa. The three synoptic Gospels indicate that Simon of Cyrene assists him, having been compelled by the Romans to do so. In Luke chapter 23, verse 27 through 28, Jesus tells the women in the multitude of people following him not to weep for him, but for themselves and their children. At Calvary, Jesus is offered a sponge soaked in a concoction usually offered as a painkiller. According to Matthew and Mark, he refuses it. The soldiers then crucify Jesus and cast lots for his clothes. Above Jesus' head on the cross is Pilate's inscription, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Soldiers and passers-by mock him about it. Two convicted thieves are crucified along with Jesus. In Matthew and Mark, both thieves mock Jesus. In Luke, one of them rebukes Jesus while the other defends him. Jesus tells the defender, "Today you will be with me in paradise." In the Gospel of John, Mary, the mother of Jesus and the beloved disciple, were at the crucifixion. Jesus tells the beloved disciple to take care of his mother. The Roman soldiers break the two thieves' legs, a procedure designed to hasten death in a crucifixion. But they do not break those of Jesus, as he is already dead. In John chapter 19, verse 34, one soldier pierces Jesus' side with a lance, and blood and water flow out. In the Synoptics, when Jesus dies, the heavy curtain at the temple is torn. In Matthew chapter 27, verse 51 through 54, an earthquake breaks open tombs. In Matthew and Mark, terrified by the events, a Roman centurion states that Jesus was the Son of God. On the same day, Joseph of Arimathea, with Pilate's permission and with Nicodemus's help, removes Jesus' body from the cross, wraps him in a clean cloth, and buries him in his new rock-hewn tomb. In Matthew chapter 27, verse 63 through 66, on the following day, the chief Jewish priests ask Pilate for the tomb to be secured, and with Pilate's permission, the priests place seals on the large stone covering the entrance. Next time, we'll deal with the final section of Christianity and Jesus. We'll deal with the resurrection and ascension, and then the early Christianity church. Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, click like and leave comments so that we can discuss this further. Also, if you'd like, please subscribe, and that way you'll receive email notifications of future episodes in this world and other worlds. Try out our other worlds, the wonderful world of art, the world of books, the world of food, the world of family, the world of games, and the world of music. Go and be inspired.